Welcome to the Cyber Business Podcast, where we feature top founders and entrepreneurs and share their inspiring stories. Now, let's get started with the show.
Matthew Connor here, host of the Cyber Business Podcast. Today we're joined by Barninder Khurana, CIO at Patriot Growth Insurance Services. Barninder, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for joining us. Before we get too far in, a quick word from our sponsors. Hackers are getting smarter. Is your security keeping up? Cyberlink sells industry-leading AI-powered cybersecurity solutions that detect threats in real time, so you know about an attack before the damage is done, not after. Learn more at cyberlinks.com. That's cyberlynx.com. And now back to our show. Barninder, for those who aren't familiar, can you tell us about Patriot Growth Insurance Services and your role there as CIO?
So Patriot Growth Insurance Services is a full-service national insurance agency. We focus on property and casualty, employee benefits, personal and ancillary insurance services. We have about 2,100 employees, 160 locations, 29 different states. We're a top 25 insurance agency in the U.S. And we're growing pretty rapidly.
Fantastic. And so you're pretty new to the role of CIO, yeah? There
That is
at
correct.
Patriot.
I've been here 3 months.
Fantastic. Well, I really like, I think so far we've had about 200 guests on the podcast, of which I'd say at least 150, maybe 175 were in that CIO, CISO role. And I don't think any two have had the same path to success, right? So if you could kind of walk us through your origin story, what got you into tech, and how did you go from there to here?
Sure. What got me into tech was a phone call that I made to my dad when I was in India. It's 1997. And in India, if you don't know, you have to go to different colleges, take entrance exams for each college, and then the colleges decide what majors you can get into. So I made a phone call to my dad and I said, "Hey, I got admission in computer science in one college, and I got admission in civil engineering in another college." And he said, "Go for computer science." That was it. It was a very easy decision. There were no spreadsheets, there were no pros and cons, there were no chat GPT searches, there were no college visits, there was no nothing that now my kids are going through or will be going through in the near future. And I was in computer science, and I haven't looked back. And frankly, it was a wonderful decision, even though it was a bit of a happenstance and kind of last minute.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because you mentioned having kids, and it's entirely different now. So, I mean, kids now, with the advent of AI, I think it was an easy thing for your dad to say, "Hey, you should probably go computer science because that's the wave of the future," right? So that's an easy one. But how do you now, with kids growing up, how do you go ahead and tell them you should go into this or that? How does that work, right? Especially since the path isn't as clear now.
Yeah, no, it's a very good question. I mean, I recently did a talk at NYU for juniors and seniors in one of the classes, and this was the question front and center. How do you decide? And these are kids who are doing bachelors in computer science, and their world is shifting and changing right underneath them. And so, I'm standing there, in this space, and they're looking at me saying, "So what do we do now?" And it's interesting. A lot of the underlying skills that are needed to become a pure, true technologist haven't changed, and they won't change. The path to getting there will accelerate. So if you want to be a technologist, you can still be a technologist. You can still learn the languages. You can still learn how to code. You will just get there faster. You will be able to churn out code faster. You'll be able to check your code faster. But if you don't know it, then you're going to stumble, you're going to create challenges, you're going to create issues, you're going to introduce uh, security holes in your code unbeknownst to yourselves, and at some point somebody will figure that out and potentially attack you. Um, so for everybody else, look, everybody's using AI tools today. My kids are using ChatGPT and Claude and Perplexity, and they're sending me their texts all day long about different tools that they're discovering. That I have to tell them, hey, don't sign up for that one. Like that one's actually a spam, and that's not a real tool. Um, but learn, right? The main thing is you have got to learn.
Yeah.
Uh, but again, that really hasn't changed over the last century, over century plus. If you don't learn, you'll stagnate. That's a fundamental principle. And so if you stagnate, you're never going to be successful. So continue learning, continue moving. As you do that, things will become clear. Things will fade away because some things will just fall out and other things will rise to the top as an area of interest that you have, a skill that is needed in the market, and a company that has a need for that skill.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good point. And I think the challenge is things are advancing so quickly now that keeping up is a challenge, right? It's tough when there's 100 new products every day, and that may be an exaggeration, or it might be right. I don't know. But there are so many new products, and it's all happening so quickly. I think the challenge is how do you keep up? And as the CIO, kind of what's your advice to other CIOs in how you keep up with this rapid advancement in technology?
Start with the business needs. If you don't look at the business needs and you're there to play with technology, there's always going to be options. There's always going to be things that will distract you, right? Every company has that, have those people who just want to play with technology, right? Technologists being technologists, getting excited about technology, and they want to play with technology. Well, that doesn't always solve the business problem. That doesn't always solve what we do and what we need. So the question is, what is the problem they're trying to solve? And then go find the solution to solve that problem. Don't do it the other way around.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's interesting. I completely agree. And I think that's really, really great advice. And then, when it comes to, I think we've talked about this topic a lot, and I think it's really relevant, and I think it changes rapidly. But keeping up on the security side, um, you know, there are this is I think we've already seen the bad guys bringing, using AI, leveraging AI in their attacks. And so there's no two ways about it, right? And I like to use the knife to a gunfight analogy. It is a kind of arms race as they're using it. We have to start using AI intelligently on the defensive side, because we have to be perfect 100% of the time. They have to be lucky once, and that's it. That's the game. So if we're not using AI, we can't keep using the standard, security products that don't leverage AI, because that doesn't make sense. They're going to find vulnerabilities there faster. They're going to be able to exploit faster. They're going to be able to social engineer faster and better. That's just the reality. So, where are you in this? I know for me, I see a few gaps, and a few opportunities. But for you, where do you stand on this? What's your take?
Yeah, it's the classic technologies moving faster and faster every day. The acceleration has even gotten faster because of AI. And there are a lot of tools out there that proclaim and declare themselves as the be all end all solution to all problems. And security is not a single solution. Security is a multifaceted, multi-layered solution. It's You've got to have your fence around the house. Then you have to have a door, and the door has to be secure, and there has to be a lock on it. And you do need to use those longer nails versus the shorter screws. And then you have to have security inside the house and cameras. So it's those concepts that we very easily understand and apply in our physical world also apply to the digital world, where you have to have observability into your environment and you have to know what is happening at all times. You have to have alerts, then you have to have tools that are fighting the attacks. Even simple things like phishing attacks are becoming more and more sophisticated now because of AI. Many years ago, one of the banks I was using said, "Hey, we can recognize your voice. If you just record your voice, and we can next time you call, we'll recognize your voice." And at that time, I told my wife, "Don't opt into that." And it was a crazy thing. Like, why wouldn't I opt into that? That's convenience. But that's also you're giving a password to a bank through your voice. And now guess what?
That's right.
Voice can be easily replicated. Even with a very short phrase, you can replicate the voice. So if you had opted into that and you forgot, and now somebody finds that vulnerability that you've opted into, they can hack into your account. So the tools are there to serve our purpose. We have to deploy multitude of combination of tools to allow us to see what's happening, deter people from getting in, hackers from getting in, and then be able to react when there is an attack. And that includes some of the newer tools, some of the pre-existing tools as well.
Yeah, no, I think that's an excellent point, and it really is kind of that uh, you still have to take that layered approach, and I think people still do need to think of it in that way of, traditional security, physical security, and cybersecurity are not that different. I mean, they're different, but there's a lot of similarities and
Concepts, right?
concepts that apply to both.
Mhm.
And I think what's really interesting, you mentioned like phishing, right? I think that's really fascinating because right now the traditional filters, the traditional security products don't do a great job of keeping those out because the bad guys are constantly find like as soon as you plug the hole, they're like, oh, okay, let me find another one, right? And so you get things like they set up a new domain and they send it out, or like the DocuSign links. I mean, everybody's seen a plethora of those in their inbox, right? And it's because they're exploiting legitimate domains. Yep, they set up that new domain. It's a legitimate domain, and that is a legitimate DocuSign link. It's just to something bad, right? And so that's tough for a traditional security product to combat. But then once you start integrating the right kinds of AI, I mean, you look at products like Darktrace, where they will then search and see, oh, you know what? I see that this domain is 7 days old. I'm going to say that this is garbage. Cool. And it just moves that to junk, and you don't have to worry about it. It's that extra layer of thinking without having to program everything in that makes, a lot of sense. And I think we're seeing the future of where security can take us with products like that, where it's not just bolting on an LLM onto a security product, right? Um, and I guess I'm kind of curious at this stage, where is that something where you are in agreement, like, yep, those are the things that we need to start looking at, exploring? How do we, because there's a business case for that, right? That is the business need. If Joey in accounting and Jane in operations, their job isn't IT. They're not the most trained on phishing. They're not going to go and be the best at that because they're good at accounting and operations. So this is a great way to support them. I mean, what's your take on where AI is now and where it's going in terms of security?
Yeah, no, I think you really, if there's anyone who signed up for a 5-year term with any of the security tools, um, I think they're doing themselves a disservice.
Yeah.
Not only now, I mean, even in the past,
Yeah.
before the advent of all things AI and all the tools that are new and upcoming tools, because what you don't know is how the technology landscape is going to evolve. Some of these tools, they're net new concepts coming out, and they will. The founders of those companies aren't in it for the long haul. They have an idea, they solve the problem, but they're hoping somebody buys them.
Yep.
And what happens to the data that they collected? Are those terms going to be honored as you sign them? So there's a lot of uncertainty in the market when you look across the landscape of new tools that are coming up.
Yeah.
Having said that, you do need to continuously look and um, scour the market to see what solutions are out there. What are your gaps? Again, start with the business problem. What is the problem that you're trying to solve?
Yeah.
And if the problem that you're trying to solve is the phishing tool that you have is old and it can't really do a good job of um, training your employees or catching those attacks, then absolutely you should be looking for an alternative tool. And what an opportune time to look for an alternative tool because there are so many better tools out there now. And so, yeah, you should always be looking for newer technology, newer tools out there from a security standpoint, from app dev standpoint, um, from even from simpler business solutions. I'm in insurance, so I think, what are the business problems in the insurance space? Um, you know, the classic example that I have is 10 years ago, I was trying to solve this one problem where insurance application comes in and it has to be um, hand coded into the system. There was no good way of doing it. And I was working with a vendor. We're trying to figure out a solution. And the best solution we came up with was OCR, intelligent OCR, right? Okay, well, intelligent OCR is great if I am working on a very static standard form and the grid doesn't really change that much. The moment that template changes, the grid changes, all of a sudden all bets are off, and now you're, back to having to code that grid
Yeah.
with some of the AI tools that are now commercialized at this point, that problem has completely disappeared.
Right.
10 years ago, that was a huge problem for the insurance companies.
Yeah.
And now it is not a problem anymore. There are commercial level tools available for different types of intake processes that you can just give it a set of documents and it will extract the information that you need, put it in a database, and you've bypassed that entire process, right? And
Yep.
then you can choose if you want a human in the middle, or you can choose if you want it fully automated. You can choose what your accuracy level, acceptable accuracy level is. So again, what is the problem that you're trying to solve? If you're coming back to your example, if the tool that you have currently that you signed up for 5 years ago, you probably should be looking for a better tool. You probably should be looking at your entire toolkit and thinking about, is there a better solution out there for me? Because this is something that only solves the problem one way. And my attack vectors are different. I have so many different ways that somebody can attack me, and I can only train people and catch those attacks from a certain point of view. But now, with better tools out there, maybe there's a better solution.
Yeah. And I think that that is spot on. I couldn't agree more. And it makes me think that as AI is advancing, one of the things that becomes really important as we get better and better tools and it solves more and more problems is that at the end of the day, organizations are comprised of people. It's the human element that makes an organization what it is. And will we see a billion-dollar one person, company that is run purely by AI and agents? Sure, probably at some point. But for now, there's still millions and millions of people who work at all kinds of organizations. And I think what this comes down to is that human aspect. I think the soft skills are becoming even more important than they were in the past. Those of team building and leadership and communication. I think these are the kind of the backbone of any organization and team. And I think it goes underappreciated too much, especially in our industry where tech is cool and we like the shiny new things. It's so much fun and we can just focus on the cool tech. But the reality is it's the people who implement and who assist and who make that tech, work and be a cool thing other, and that actually helps the organization. So how do you go about that? Is that something, do you agree? Right? Is that like, yeah, no, totally, but no, tech will replace all those people, or is it no, the human is the most important element, and this is how we go about, improving that or maximizing
Yeah,
that?
no, there's a lot of fear in the market, and especially in the tech space. There's a lot of fear um, that AI will replace everybody's job. Um, Look, the reality is, anytime there is technology advancement, there is disruption. You can't get away from it. That's just the reality of life. Disruption will come, disruption will happen. When railway tracks were being laid down, yeah, the buggy drivers were all displaced, right? Um, but now we pay extra for those guys, right? To take that special ride, right?
Yep.
When watches 200, I don't know how many years ago, but 200, let's say 200 years ago,
Yep.
watches were being made by hand. Then they started making at a commercial scale. And now if you want to get a handmade watch, yeah, you're gonna pay pretty penny,
That's right.
right? So there's a cycle. Um, Dust will settle. The fear is real, and we have to acknowledge that fear. We have to then say, AI is not going away. AI is going to make its way through the fabric of all industries and all companies at all levels. So you can't just shut your eyes and hope it goes away. It's not. Um, so the question is, what do you do with that? You have choices. You can upskill your people, or you can say, no, I'm going to replace everybody with AI. There have been cases where companies have tried to do that, and those companies have learned the lesson the hard way, that you can't actually do that. But you can teach people, you can upskill people, you can ask them to step up, you can enable them to learn. And that's how you add value to the people that you have. And that's how you grow loyalty. That's how you retain the people that and the skill sets that you need. Because these are the people who have context, right? The biggest thing about AI is somebody has to give it context, right? Everybody talks about writing prompts and giving it proper context. Well, who's got the context in this case? It's the people. So how about we teach them on how to accelerate their world, right? At any given time now, and it's one of those things, you think your life is going to get easier. I'm running four different things on my computer, one with Claude, one with ChatGPT. I've got Microsoft Copilot, and I'm running all of these things in parallel to do different tasks for me. Um, but I'm working 15-hour days. Um, but I can just do those things faster. I just went through, as a prime example, I just went through 137 resumes. I'm recruiting for a role, and I was just joking with my HR team that going through 137 resumes a year ago would have taken me 3 weeks between meetings, looking at every single resume, making the assessment, even downloading. Some of these applications don't allow downloading these resumes. Now I just wrote a little script. It goes in 45 minutes later. I had all the resumes downloaded, categorized. Um, the first pass was already done based on the criteria I had. And I was already reaching out to my HR team to say, all right, here's the five people that I'd like to meet with out of the 137,
Yeah.
right?
You're
So the
supercharged now.
3 week time frame, yeah, so the 3 week time frame, I was able to finish all of that work in about 45 minutes to an hour. Um, but that context still sits with me. What's the type of person I want? And this is just the first pass. Now I have to actually go and meet with those folks and understand if they're a good fit for the team. Can they lead the team? Can they bring that energy that I need in that team?
Yeah. No, I think you're spot on because the reality is all of those companies that kind of let people go thinking that AI was going to replace them, it's a huge mistake. The reality is AI is a tool that supercharges people now. It lets you do 3 weeks of work in 45 minutes, an hour, and you're working 15-hour days. You're like a superhero now compared to the you of a year ago. 5 years ago, no contest. You're working circles around, the 2020 version of you. It's no contest. So now we're doing so much more, so much better, so much faster. That's
That's right.
fantastic. That's the big win. And so what that translates into is more money being made. The economy grows as a whole. I mean, just rewind 200 years ago. You mentioned 200 years ago. Great. You rewind 200 years ago, the world's economy was a tiny fraction of what it is today. And now look at, sure, not every place on the planet is wealthy, but now since we're in the US and we're talking about, to US business people, we are so much wealthier now than we've ever been. I was just reading the Wall Street Journal article. 430,000, US households now have a $30 million or more in net worth. That's phenomenal, right? That is a huge number, compared to, you go back only a couple decades ago, and that was a much smaller number. And so this is AI is going to that number is going to skyrocket, right? People are going to live much better lives no matter what. And I think it comes down to the balance. Just like if you had an Apple Watch and it's buzzing you constantly and ding, 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 and you're 24/7 being, bothered by the alerts, you can either let technology ruin your life, or you can have it enable a much better life for you. And I think that's where we are with AI, because a lot of people, I think, miss that point. You've got to sculpt and use technology to your advantage to make your life better, not to control you, because you get lost in a world of VR and just forget to eat, and now you're dead. Like or get you annoyed to death by all the, or just kind of shoot yourself, because if you go down the wrong path on Instagram, the world is just horrible, right? There's so many bad places on the internet, and social media makes it seem like that's the whole world. Step outside, breathe some air, take a walk, feel the grass, right? It's not as bad as it seems. Anyway, I digress, but I think that's the real issue. And what you're saying is you've got to really kind of use that to your advantage, and that's what you're doing.
Yeah, no, that is absolutely the reality. And to your point, things, you know, when, going, I don't know why we're going back 100 years or 200 years, but
Do it.
it is the a good, it's an appropriate um, comparison. When if you had to go from here to California, whatever, 200 years ago, it would take you months.
Yeah.
So not many, and you may not make it, right?
No.
So many people did not take that journey unless they absolutely had to. I have done a 24-hour trip to California, right? So more people are traveling because it is faster and easier. More people are taking advantage of that technology and the advancements in that technology because it is easier and faster. So with AI, more and more people are going to start using it. More and more people are going to start leveraging it. It will make things faster for them. There's a learning curve for everybody, but the beauty is we're all starting at zero,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
You see everybody on LinkedIn, and I joke about this, but everybody on LinkedIn is an AI expert right now, right?
Yeah. Right.
But unless you've been in, and even the data analytics space, where everybody's calling themselves AI experts because they were in the data analytics space, but true AI experts, we're all starting at the ground level.
Yep.
And so as long as you're learning, as long as you're growing, you'll be fine.
You know, I think truer words have seldom been said. That is that is as good a place as any to kind of put a beautiful bow on the entire episode. I think that is absolutely fantastic. Barninder, thank you again for coming on. But before we go, can you tell everybody where they can find out more about you and more about Patriot Growth Insurance Services?
Sure. For Patriot, you can go to patriotgis.com, and you can find me on LinkedIn.
It's awesome. Super easy. Well, until next time.
All right. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Thanks for listening to the Cyber Business Podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.